Have you ever wondered if a single moment could change everything? If one split-second decision could alter the course of not just your life, but someone else's too? That's exactly what happened to Mike Donovan, a humble janitor working the night shift at Westlake Memorial Hospital. His story isn't just about heroism, it's about second chances, unexpected love, and the beautiful chaos that follows when fate intervenes. If this journey of redemption and romance touches your heart, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories that remind us of the extraordinary power of ordinary people. Mike's calloused hands gripped the mop handle as he worked his way down the empty hospital corridor. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the polished floor. It was 2 a.m., the quietest time of his shift, when the hospital seemed to hold its breath between emergencies. He preferred these hours. Less people meant fewer judgmental glances, fewer opportunities for someone to recognize him from his past life. 5 years ago, he'd been Dr. Michael Donovan, respected cardiologist. Now, he was just Mike, the night janitor who kept to himself. The white coat had been replaced by gray maintenance coveralls, the stethoscope by a ring of jangling keys. His fall from grace had been spectacular and public, a wrongful death lawsuit that had cost him his medical license, his marriage, and nearly his relationship with his daughter, Lily. Lily was the only light in his life now. At 16, she was brilliant, compassionate, and somehow still loved her father despite everything. How he'd managed to retain custody after the divorce was still a mystery to him, but he thanked whatever higher power existed every day for that miracle. He worked these night shifts so he could be there for her during the day, helping with homework, attending her debate competitions, being the father she deserved. The squeak of his mop bucket echoed through the corridor as he turned the corner toward the administrative wing. That's when he heard it, a soft thud followed by the sound of breaking glass. Mike froze, listening. Another sound, a gasping, choking noise that raised the hairs on the back of his neck. His body moved before his mind could catch up, muscle memory from another life taking over. He found her in the break room, collapsed on the floor beside an overturned chair. Dr. Eleanor Chen, the new head of cardiology, ironically enough. Mike had cleaned her office many times but had always made sure to be gone before she arrived for her early morning shifts. He recognized her immediately, mid-30s, always impeccably dressed, with a reputation for brilliance that had followed her from Johns Hopkins. Now she was sprawled on the linoleum, her face turning an alarming shade of blue, one hand clutching at her throat. Anaphylaxis. The diagnosis came to him instantly, along with the realization that she had only minutes left without intervention. Dr. Chen, he called, kneeling beside her. Her eyes widened in recognition, not of him, but of the fact that someone had found her. Are you allergic to something? Do you have an EpiPen? She managed a small nod, her hand weakly gesturing toward her purse on the counter. Mike lunged for it, dumping the contents onto the floor. Wallet, keys, phone, there. The EpiPen had rolled under the table. He grabbed it, removed the cap, and without hesitation, jabbed it into her outer thigh through her skirt. But something was wrong. The injector didn't click. He tried again, nothing. The EpiPen was defective or expired. Eleanor's eyes were beginning to roll back, her lips now a frightening shade of purple. Mike knew what was happening, her airway was closing completely. Without immediate intervention, brain damage would begin in minutes, death shortly after. His mind raced through his options. Call for help? Too slow. The emergency department was 2 floors down, and at this hour, the administrative wing was deserted. Try to find another EpiPen? No time. There was only one option, one he hadn't performed in 5 years, one that could get him arrested for practicing medicine without a license. An emergency cricothyrotomy, creating an airway through the throat when all else fails. But he had no scalpel, no tube, no medical equipment of any kind. Just his janitor's keyring, a pocket knife, and a ballpoint pen. It would be too risky, too crude. There had to be another way. That's when he remembered something from his residency, a case where a doctor had saved a choking victim not with the Heimlich maneuver, but with suction. A desperate kiss of life. Without hesitation, Mike tilted Eleanor's head back, pinched her nose, sealed his mouth over hers, and sucked as hard as he could. He felt something shift, then pulled back quickly, turning his head as a small piece of food, what looked like a peanut, flew from his mouth. Eleanor gasped, a horrible ragged sound, but it was the most beautiful thing Mike had heard in years. Air was moving again. Her chest rose and fell in desperate heaves. The blue tinge began to fade from her lips. "Stay with me," he urged, rolling her into the recovery position. "Help is coming." He pressed the emergency call button on the wall, then grabbed her phone, dialing 911 for good measure. Within minutes, the break room was swarming with medical personnel. Mike found himself pushed to the periphery as doctors and nurses, people who had no idea he'd once been one of them, worked on stabilizing Dr. Chen. He slipped away quietly, returning to his mop and bucket. By morning, his shift would be over, and this would just be another story he couldn't tell Lily. Except it wasn't. 3 days later, Mike was cleaning the windows in the main lobby when a voice behind him said, "It was you, wasn't it?" He turned to find Eleanor Chen standing there, looking remarkably recovered though still a bit pale. She wore a crisp white coat over a blue dress, her hospital ID clipped to her pocket. "I'm sorry," he said, though his heart hammered in his chest. "The janitor who saved my life. It was you." It wasn't a question. The emergency response team said someone had performed some kind of suction technique to clear my airway before they arrived. The security footage shows you entering the break room at 2:17 a.m. You were the only one there. Mike set down his cleaning supplies. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," she said firmly. "What you did was perform an emergency medical procedure that isn't even taught in most medical schools anymore. It's obscure, it's risky, and it saved my life." She tilted her head, studying him. "You're not just a janitor, are you?" The question hung between them. 5 years of anonymity threatened to crumble. 5 years of rebuilding his life, of accepting his punishment, of trying to make peace with his new identity. "I'm just a guy who mops floors, Dr. Chen." "Eleanor," she corrected. "And I think you're more than that. The way you positioned me afterward, that was textbook recovery position. You knew to call both the internal emergency line and 911. She took a step closer. "Your hands didn't shake. Not once." I watched the footage. Mike felt exposed, as if she could see through the janitor's uniform to the doctor underneath. "I used to be an EMT," he lied. "Long time ago." She didn't believe him, he could tell. But she nodded anyway. "Well, former EMT, I owe you dinner at the very least. And I need to know what I can do to thank you properly." "That's really not necessary." "It is to me," she interrupted. "I have a daughter. She's 8. If you hadn't found me." Her voice caught, and Mike saw the fear she'd been hiding behind her professional demeanor. "Please. Just dinner. One meal where I can thank the man who made sure my daughter still has a mother." The mention of her daughter broke through his defenses. How could he refuse when she put it that way? "Okay," he conceded. "One dinner." She smiled, relief evident in her eyes. "Great. Friday at 7? There's a little Italian place called Vincenzo's about 2 blocks from here." "I know it," Mike said. It had been one of his favorite restaurants in his previous life. "But I should warn you, I have a daughter too. She's 16, and Friday is usually our movie night." "Bring her," Eleanor said without hesitation. "Sophia would love to meet her. We can make it an early dinner." Before Mike could formulate another excuse, she handed him a business card. "My personal number is on the back. Text me if anything changes." With that, she walked away, her heels clicking confidently on the polished floor. Mike stared at the card in his hand, wondering what he'd just agreed to. One dinner. What harm could it do? He'd keep his past to himself, accept her thanks, and go back to his invisible life. Simple. He had no idea how wrong he was. Friday evening arrived with a flurry of anxiety. Mike stood in front of his bedroom mirror, frowning at his reflection. He'd lost weight since his doctor days, his face more angular, his hair now flecked with gray at the temples. The blue button-down shirt he wore felt foreign after years of t-shirts and coveralls. "Dad, we're going to be late." Lily called from the living room of their small apartment. "And you said this wasn't a date." "It's not," he called back, though he found himself reaching for cologne before stopping himself. "This was just a thank you dinner. Nothing more." Lily was waiting by the door, scrolling through her phone. She'd grown so much in the past few years, taller than her mother now, with Mike's dark hair but her own sense of style. Tonight she wore jeans and a vintage band t-shirt under a denim jacket covered in pins and patches. "You look nice," he said, grabbing his keys. She rolled her eyes but smiled. "It's just dinner with some doctor lady and her kid. No need to break out the formal wear." She studied him for a moment. "You, on the other hand, look suspiciously date-ready." "It's not a date," Mike repeated as they headed down to his ancient Honda Civic. "Dr. Chen just wants to say thank you for helping her during a medical emergency." By sucking food out of her mouth, Lily said with teenage bluntness. "Which is both gross and kind of awesome. Very zombie apocalypse field medicine." Mike couldn't help but laugh. That's one way to look at it. The drive to Vincenzo's was short, but it gave Mike time to prepare himself. He would be polite, gracious, and vague about his background. He would accept Eleanor's thanks, make sure Lily and Sophia had a nice time, and then extract himself from any further social obligations. Clean and simple. Except nothing about Eleanor Chen had proven to be simple so far. She was already waiting outside the restaurant, holding the hand of a small girl with pigtails and light-up sneakers. Eleanor had traded her professional attire for jeans and a soft-looking sweater that made her look younger, more approachable. She smiled and waved when she spotted them. "You must be Lily," she said warmly as they approached. "I'm Eleanor, and this is Sophia." Sophia looked up at Lily with undisguised admiration. "I like your jacket," she said shyly. Lily, to Mike's surprise, knelt down to Sophia's level. "Thanks. I like your shoes. Do they light up when you walk?" Sophia nodded enthusiastically and demonstrated with a little hop. "They're my favorite." "Very cool," Lily said, offering her hand. "Want to be my dinner buddy?" Just like that, an alliance was formed. Mike watched in amazement as his sometimes sullen teenager transformed into a patient, kind companion to the younger girl. They walked into the restaurant ahead of the adults, already deep in conversation about the merits of light-up footwear versus pin-covered jackets. "She's wonderful," Eleanor said quietly as they followed behind. "You've done a good job." "I got lucky," Mike replied. "She's always been the best part of me." The hostess led them to a corner booth, and Mike found himself sitting across from Eleanor, with the girls side by side. The restaurant was exactly as he remembered it, warm lighting, red checkered tablecloths, the smell of garlic and tomato sauce in the air. How many times had he eaten here in his previous life? Celebrating promotions, anniversaries, successful surgeries? "So," Eleanor said after they'd ordered, "you never actually told me your name." Mike realized she was right. In the chaos of their first meeting and the awkwardness of their second, he'd never introduced himself. "Mike," he said. "Mike Donovan." If she recognized the name, she didn't show it. "Well, Mike Donovan, former EMT and current lifesaver, tell me about yourself. What brought you to Westlake Memorial?" Mike took a sip of water, buying time. "Not much to tell. I needed a job with night hours so I could be there for Lily during the day. The hospital was hiring. Dad's being modest, Lily chimed in. He gave up everything to take care of me after the divorce. He used to. Lily, Mike interrupted gently. I'm sure Dr. Chen doesn't want to hear our whole life story. Eleanor, she corrected again. And actually, I do. But only what you're comfortable sharing. She turned to Sophia, who was showing Lily something on a small tablet. Soph, why don't you show Lily that game you like? The one with the puzzles? As the girls became absorbed in the game, Eleanor leaned forward slightly. Look, I understand privacy. Better than most, actually. Whatever you're not telling me, whatever brought a man with obvious medical training to a janitor position, it's your business. I'm just grateful you were there that night. The sincerity in her voice disarmed him. What happened, anyway? If you don't mind my asking. Peanut butter cookie, she said with a rueful smile. I've been allergic my whole life, but someone brought homemade cookies to the break room and swore they were nut-free. I should have known better, but I was at the end of a 36-hour shift and not thinking clearly. She shook her head. My EpiPen was expired. I'd been meaning to get a new prescription but kept putting it off. Stupid, really. We all make mistakes, Mike said, thinking of his own catastrophic error in judgment years ago. Some mistakes are costlier than others, she replied, and something in her tone made him wonder if she was carrying her own burdens. Before he could respond, their food arrived, pasta for the adults, pizza for the girls. The conversation shifted to lighter topics as they ate. Eleanor told them about growing up in California, her decision to become a doctor, her move to the Midwest for the position at Westlake. Mike shared carefully edited stories about Lily's debate team victories and their weekend hiking trips. The girls contributed occasional comments but were mostly content with their own conversation. It was nice. Nicer than Mike had expected. Eleanor was intelligent, funny, and surprisingly easy to talk to. She didn't press when he deflected personal questions, and she seemed genuinely interested in his observations about the hospital, even from a janitor's perspective. By the time they'd finished their meal and were waiting for dessert, Mike found himself relaxing. Maybe this wouldn't be so complicated after all. Just a pleasant dinner with no expectations. Then Sophia looked up from her tablet and asked innocently, Mr. Mike, were you a doctor like my mom? Lily said you used to work at a hospital before. The table went silent. Lily's eyes widened in horror at her inadvertent revelation. Mike felt the comfortable atmosphere evaporate instantly. He began, but Eleanor interrupted. Sophia, that's not a polite question to ask someone you've just met, she said gently. Mr. Mike's job is his business. But Lily said. Sophia, Eleanor's tone was firmer now. Why don't you show Lily that video of our cat trying to catch the laser pointer? I think she'd like that. Crisis temporarily averted, but Mike could feel Eleanor's curious gaze on him. The desserts arrived, tiramisu for the adults, gelato for the girls, creating another welcome distraction. But the easy flow of conversation had been disrupted, replaced by a tension that hadn't been there before. As they finished their desserts, Eleanor excused herself to take Sophia to the restroom. The moment they were out of earshot, Mike turned to his daughter. Lily, what did you tell her? Lily had the grace to look ashamed. I'm sorry, Dad. It just came up when we were talking. She asked what you did before working at the hospital, and I said you used to be a doctor. I didn't tell her anything else, I swear. Mike ran a hand through his hair. It's okay. It's not your fault. I should have been clearer about what was off limits. Are you mad? No, sweetheart. Not at you. He sighed. It's just complicated. Why don't you just tell her the truth? She seems nice. And she's a doctor.